The kid wanted a Happy Meal for so long and they finally get it, and then they make sure they eat every last bit even though they're already full. Right? Hello, welcome to Parents Talk. Today we have Shelly Haas here with Eastful Eating. And last time she was on Parents Talk, we talked about all the different childhood programming that we get when we're kids that we carry on into adult life that cause us to be unhealthy. Well, today we're going to be talking about something that is on everybody's minds these days, healthy or unhealthy eating. And Shelley is going to talk about a hunger scale, which is something that she uses not only with adults, but with children too. So, Shelley, can you explain what the hunger scale is and how you use it in your program?
So, the hunger scale is really just a visual tool that supports my clients in learning to listen to their body in one way. Learning to listen to your body is something that most of us are not taught, and it's a big part of my work. And there's a lot of different ways we can listen to our body when it comes to food. One of the main, most important, and kind of beginner ways to start learning to listen to our body is with this hunger scale. And really, it's all about listening to your hunger and fullness cues, right? So many people are used to listening to, I don't know, the rules we're handed, telling us when and how much we should eat, versus tuning into our body. How hungry am I? When am I hungry? When am I feeling satisfied and full? So that we can actually eat according to what our body's asking for. Feeding it when it's hungry, not waiting until we're absolutely ravenous, and then stopping when we're comfortably full rather than what many of us often do is eat to a point where we feel uncomfortable, right? Yeah.
Okay, I get all of this, but something that really helps drive the message home is when we tell stories. So can
Yeah.
you tell a story about your client Jane and her grandson Brandon? Because you told me this story and I'm like, whoa, every parent needs to hear it.
So Jane was going through my program, and it's a group of women, and every week we have a live call, and every week we celebrate what our wins are together, right? Because that's so important. And so Jane came to the group session one week, and we had been focusing on listening to our hunger and fullness cues. But the hunger scale is just this scale of like red is ravenous and like starving, and then just growling, hungry, neutral, satisfied, and then it goes into overly full, bloated, and nauseous, right? So there's this whole scale of hunger. So Jane decided to help her focus on listening to her body in that way. She printed out the hunger scale and she just hung it on her pantry door as a cue for her to remember to check in with her body. So Jane had a grandson, and this grandson was quite overweight. He was really struggling with food. His parents were doing the best that they could. They were doing what they knew how to do, right? And so they were impressing on him everything they had been taught about food, which was we need to restrict the sugar, we need to restrict all the snacks, so we need to kind of control and monitor his eating and making sure he's not eating too much, right? So it was all focused on restriction. And it was getting really troublesome and really emotional for the whole family. And what Brandon started doing was stealing all kinds of snacks from the pantry. And he would bring them up to his room and hide them so that he had a whole stash of food for whenever he wanted to eat when nobody was around to judge him or tell him not to do it or anything. And it's so common in our lives too, right? When we try to go on the restrictive diets, our brains are brilliant. When our brains think that food is scarce, it kicks back and it backfires because our brains try to protect us. So whenever we try to really restrict food, our brain obsesses about food, right? The same thing that happens to us as adults in restrictive diets was going on with Brandon. His parents were doing what they thought they should be doing for him, which was restricting food, monitoring his food. And they were actually just about to put a lock on the pantry so that he didn't have free access to it. Now, Brandon was like 8 or 9 because he didn't know what else to do, right? So Brandon came over to visit his grandma Jane for the weekend, and she had her hunger scale hung up on the pantry door. And he asked her about it. He's like, "What is this, Grandma?" And so she sat down and she explained it to him. She explained how she was learning to listen to her body when it came to food, and how she felt like sometimes she overate and ate past fullness or ate when she wasn't hungry for other emotional reasons. And she explained to him that having this hunger scale printed out was a visual reminder for her to check in with her body and how hungry she was and when she was full. And they went through the whole thing together. And so she's sharing this in our group call. And she starts tearing up as she's telling the story. And she talks about how she just witnessed everything in her grandson soften. His body language softened, his face lit up. And they had this whole conversation around how he could do that too. He could learn to listen to his body and check in when he's hungry. He nourishes himself because that's what his body wants, and paying attention to stopping when it's full. And it gave him this whole sense of autonomy, right? Where he got to be in charge of when and how what and how much he ate in an empowering way, right? In a way where he had a tool to utilize. And so she shared this with his parents. They hung up the hunger scale on their pantry door, and they never had to put a lock on the pantry. And so not only did grandma's relationship with food change through going through the program, but the ripple effect that it had for her grandson and her family was tremendous, because we can all imagine how, if things had continued the way they were, the kind of relationship Brandon might have had with food the rest of his life, right? And I've got to tell you that believe there was about 8 women in the Zoom room when this story was shared. There was not a dry eye in the room.
I remember being in Brandon's position, being on Weight Watchers, and never being, I mean, yes, I had plenty of food to eat, but it wasn't what I wanted to eat. It was, and it's not that it was just healthy, but back then the Weight Watchers snacks weren't good. And I wanted what the other kids were eating.
Mhm.
But then I was torn between people pleasing, losing weight and getting the rewards, or getting what I wanted and having what the other kids were having, whether it be hot dogs or ice cream or cake at a birthday party instead of carrot sticks and celery sticks, or Weight Watchers ice cream, which was horrible back then.
Mhm.
And that turmoil of not knowing which way to go. Do I get what I want, or do I please everybody who's trying to help me?
Right.
And
Right.
so I could imagine everyone in your group who probably went through that same stuff. So why do you think everyone was crying? Because that's why I feel like I would have.
I think it was a myriad of reasons because we all have such different experiences in the ways that the things that were impressed upon us as children, via things like Weight Watchers as kids, or something similar to Brandon's story, or even being chubby as a kid and being teased and having that be deep trauma, down to, there's been so many influences that we've had, whether it be around the food specifically or around body shape and size and weight and things that adults said to us as children. And there was lots of conversation after this. And the conversation also went to a lot of emotions around the ways that women in the room, most of the women in the room were older, if they had kids, they'd already raised kids, they had nieces and nephews, and really recognizing how some of the kids in their life were impacted by that, whether that was influences they had put on their kids unknowingly before they knew better, um, ways that they witnessed maybe nieces and nephews being influenced by their parents, and just really empathy. The tears were about empathy because they could all connect different stories in their life to the story that Jane told.
I think that is really part of the power of a group program
Yeah.
is sharing these stories and knowing that you're not the only one who has gone through this.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, 100%. And the other piece to that is that, especially as women, we just are such inherent caregivers, right? And we just want to take care of the people around us and love them and do the best by them that we possibly can. And so oftentimes, the women I work with, they want to make changes for themselves with food so desperately, right? And that motivation is there. And when they bring in another layer of, oh, this also just isn't about me. This is also about me breaking those, playing a part in breaking those generational patterns where I now know, if I'm doing this work, I know that I'm going to be aware of how I'm affecting the kids around me. I'm going to be aware of the things that I'm saying to the kids around me. I'm going to be aware of the things I'm saying to myself about food and body when I'm around kids, because I want to be helping to break those generational patterns rather than continue them. And so, for a lot of women, when they really tune into that, the personal work that they're doing around healing their relationship with food and with their body, when it extends and they realize how much it benefits the young people in their life too, and like has a ripple effect, there tends to be more motivation because we want to be, good role models. We want to be a positive influence in the young people in our lives, right? We don't want to pass on things that were passed on to us that we still struggle with as adults. We want to do better. We want to create a better ripple effect. So I know that that's part of the emotion too. Their why behind doing this work expanded beyond themselves.
and another thing that really struck home with me was putting a lock on the pantry. My husband and I have been watching the sitcom comedy Mike and Molly. It's about an overweight couple, and they met at Overeaters Anonymous. Well, they're needing to lose weight because they're going through fertility treatments and they really need to zero in their diet. So they go and start throwing away everything that's bad for them.
Hmm.
And the way that backfires is they have the ability to go out into the world. Like Mike goes out for breakfast he's a cop, goes out for breakfast with his partner every morning. Well, throwing the stuff away at home doesn't help him make the right choices at breakfast time. Or, Molly going out with her sister and her mother drinking, and then they get a big plate of nachos. Throwing the stuff away at home doesn't help making the right choices when you're not at home. So tell me, how else could that lock on the pantry have backfired?
So I always come back. I mean, this could be a much bigger conversation, but I always come back to this core understanding. And that is that our brains, our bodies are wired for survival. our reptilian part of our brain, right? It is wired to protect us and to survive. So there's all kinds of subconscious things going on in our brain that we don't really recognize. And the bottom line is that when restriction is introduced, our brain thinks food is scarce. If our brain thinks food is scarce, it thinks we are in danger. So what is it going to do? It is going to keep its eye out for any opportunity for food, which is why when we get restrictive with food, we tend to obsess about food. It's all we think about, right? And so finding some balance, having like when we go too restrictive and say, oh, we can't have any of that. I can't have any of that. I can never eat cake again. I can never eat donuts again. I can never have pancakes again, whatever it is. When we go to that extreme, it creates this internal conflict because our brain's trying to protect us and we're trying to control the part of our brain that's really much wiser than us, right? So putting a lock on the pantry door it's the forbidden fruit effect. You're saying you can't have anything in this pantry unless it's introducing control rather than introducing autonomy and learning to listen to your body and finding balance and knowing that you can have the donut sometimes, but we don't eat donuts every day because we're probably not going to feel very good, right? Like finding that balance and really, you know, kids are so much smarter than we give them credit for. So often they can soak in and understand things so much more deeply. And I think that when we hand them the power and the tools and the knowledge and the autonomy to make some of their own decisions, they feel empowered and they want that, right? So in this case, Brandon felt like he got some autonomy back. He got some individuality back. He got a say in what he was putting in his body, but he was also handed a tool to learn to listen to his body and make choices that would do better by his body, right?
I just made a video about choices today about reading. If your kid doesn't like to read because you are giving them the books you think they should read, let them choose
Yeah.
because they have to build their confidence. So if you think they should be more advanced or they shouldn't read a second grade book when they're in the third grade, let them read it. It's still reading, right?
There we go. So this is the hunger scale. So it's really a visual tool. So what happens for all of us almost, when we wait until we are absolutely starving, we're ravenous, our tummy's been growling for hours, right? When we go to eat, when we are in this red orange area, we tend to inhale our food. We eat too fast. We eat too much. We don't chew our food, so then we don't have good digestion, right? So we really want to aim to not wait this long before we start eating, right? Ideally, we listen to our body. We notice when we're hungry, when we're in the yellow, maybe getting a little bit growly in the orange. That's a good time to eat a meal. And then come over to this side, we want to stop around here. We want to check in with our body and notice, what does satisfied feel like? When am I satisfied? When do I feel comfortably full? That's when we stop eating, whether we have more on our plate or not, right? We want to try to avoid getting to stuffed, bloated, or some people will even eat to the point of feeling a little nauseous, right? So this is just a visual scale that gives you, our brains like visuals, right? So it gives you a visual. And the idea is to have this, first of all, remind you to start checking in with your body. I guide my clients, and apparently my clients guide their grandkids too, through first just learning to check in with your body. What does hungry, growling physically feel like? Like, get familiar with paying attention to that specific sensation. What does it feel like when you're ravenous or starving? Like, what can you describe what that feels like? Tuning in. And this is probably the most satisfied and full is the one that women I work with tend to really need to focus on. Like, what does that feel like? Where is my comfortable stopping point? Regardless of how many bites are left on my plate, when does my body feel satisfied and what does that physically feel like? So I can check in with my body when I'm eating and I know when the right time to stop is so that I don't get to the point of like stuffed or feeling bloated or overly full. It's a really simplistic, basic tool, and this visual is just really helpful in guiding. So, the idea is you develop the practice of noticing when you're hungry, aiming. We're not going for perfection here. This isn't like a rule, but we're aiming on starting to eat when we're kind of hungry, neutral, even maybe a little bit growly, and then we aim to stop when we're satisfied or full. And, trying to avoid waiting to eat until we're starving, because when we wait till we're starving, we often end up going all the way to the other end and we're like, oh my gosh, I just ate so much. I'm so bloated. Right? So that's the general idea. And for some people, I have on here too, another way of checking in with your level of hunger and satiety is just using a scale of 1 to 10 in your head. So, if that feels more simplistic for some people, just checking in, like put a number to it. Like, I'm creeping up on mealtime. Like, am I getting hungry? What number hungry am I on a scale of 1 to 10? And
I
I need
think
for that.
that would reach the left brain people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, now you said that Brandon was about 7, 8 years old. How early can we start? I would think as soon as they start eating baby food, start talking about it, make it
Yeah.
a habit.
Yeah. I don't think there's an age too early. Like, I mean, I have a pretty firm belief that we often underestimate what kids can understand and absorb because they're absorbing so much subconsciously just by watching us and hearing what we're saying to other people about what we're eating and how we're eating in our bodies and stuff like that. They're picking up all those subconscious things already. So why not start early and being intentional and talking with them about it? And also modeling that for them, right? Like saying out loud, "Oh, I'm comfortably full right now. I don't think I need to eat the rest of my plate because I don't want to be uncomfortably full, or I know that my body doesn't need to eat that much food." So we can even if someone thinks their kid can't quite grasp the concept of the hunger scale, you can still model it through your own behavior. The best teachers teach by example, right?
That is because kids learn their bad habits from parents, so why not model the good instead?
Yeah, yeah. The best teachers teach by example. Kids absorb that. So, I mean, I think every kid is going to be different, but I think as soon as, a kiddo is learning to talk and be able to communicate those things, you can start having those conversations in an age appropriate way.
Well, babies are really good at communicating when they're hungry.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
Well, and even full, even a breastfeeding baby will let you know when they've had enough.
I'm so glad you brought that up because we're born with those instincts. We're born following those instincts of hunger and fullness. And somewhere along the way, we've been told,
Right.
no, you have to clean your plate or you're not leaving the table. Or no, I don't care if you're hungry, you can't have a snack right now because you're going to ruin your dinner,
Or
right?
that coveted Happy Meal. The kid wanted a Happy Meal for so long, and they finally get it, and then they make sure they eat every last bit, even though they're already full.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that carries through. So we learn as kids and there's no, I want to be super clear. There's like no shaming in parents here. We are all passing on how we've been taught to operate. We don't know what we don't know. But for anyone listening, if you think about the messages that you got as a kid around food that's still hanging out with you, um, there's some things that could benefit from being changed, right? Um, I mean, I can't tell you how, like, one of the most consistent things that the women I work with really have to get their head around is people who've been told as they were kids their whole life, to finish your plate. I don't care if you're full. I don't care if you say you're full. You need to finish your plate before you leave. Or no, you can't have a stack right now. You're going to ruin your dinner. Um,
Oh,
so, those things just were ingrained in us. So when I'm working with women in this hunger scale and they're learning to stop when they're comfortably full, it's like that leaving that food on the plate, even in in their 60s or 70s, I've worked with women. I still have a hard time leaving that food on my plate because I was told the whole time growing up that I have to finish my plate. How do I throw that away? Or how do I just put that in the fridge? So that's something that the women I work with have to work through, right? As those messages. And then as they got into adulthood, we tend to do diets and plans and like, okay, I'm only supposed to eat between these hours, or I'm not supposed to eat. I'm really, really hungry right now, but it's not my time to eat yet. Or I'm really, really hungry right now, but I don't have any more calories allotted for the day. So we continue to tune out our body's cues when we started life very much naturally listening to them. So it's just a relearning. It's just coming back to getting in the habit of learning to listen to your body and trusting that it will guide you.
and I think also, if you think about it, it's not only when you eat and how much you eat, but what you eat. If you are starving to death, like my husband, oh, I'm so hungry and my sugar's low, I need a Pop Tart. Why don't you eat an apple? At least there's some fiber in it. You
Uh-huh.
know, the choices you make and what you eat matters too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's a good part. And there's so many different ways that we learn to listen to our body in the work I do. And the point that you make, my mind really ties it into waiting until you're ravenous. Like that's one of the reasons that it's not great to wait until you're starving, till you're so hungry, because not only do we tend to eat too fast and too much in those moments, but what do we choose? We tend to
Right.
choose. I mean, for me, it's always carbs. It's like I just want a huge sandwich or a pizza or something like that because it feels like when you're that hungry, it feels like nothing else will satiate you,
Oh,
but like something really rich and heavy, you know?
that's another good point. Say you're out running errands, you're out all day long, and you're just starving to death. Are you going to run into the grocery store and grab a piece of fruit? Or are you
Mhm.
going to run into that gas station and grab a bag of chips?
Yeah. 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 I personally always keep a bag of nuts in my car. That's my go-to
Good
because
choice.
nuts
Yeah.
because nuts have the protein and the fats and the carbs in. Like
And the
that
fiber.
combination, a handful of nuts will tide you over for a while so that you can, get yourself home, make yourself a meal, whatever that looks like for you. Me and my girlfriend used to joke, I call them my emergency nuts are always kept in the car.
Even a protein bar,
Yeah.
often they aren't the best choices because they're still highly processed and full of sugar, but it's still better than other choices.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
the way I'm seeing this is like on the hunger scale, we should have a scale of and rate our snacks.
Yeah, there's that too. I mean, there's different qualities of everything. There's plenty of little protein snack bars out there that have more simple, clean ingredients and a lot less sugar. It's just a matter of making the choices of what you want to keep around, for sure.
Right. Or
Yeah.
when you run into that gas station, try to make the best choice.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's the Kind brand bars. They're just those little
Yeah.
nut bars.
Hmm.
There's many of those that only have 4 grams of sugar and about four ingredients. And you can actually find those in a lot of gas stations.
Right.
So, there are better choices out there that you can make too. But yeah,
Well, we've given everybody a lot to think about
we
today.
have.
I'd like to invite anybody watching this to give us a comment. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you have any questions that we could answer in a future episode of Parents Talk. What did you think of this episode? And have you subscribed to the channel yet? Please do. Thank you so much, Shelley. I really appreciate you coming and talking about this. And
Thanks for having me on. I love talking about this.
we will definitely, I'm hoping we get a lot of questions so you could come back on and answer the viewers' questions.
I would love that. I would love that. The more questions I have from people, the more I can support. And I could have these conversations all day long. So,
So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you and not wait for another video and they just wanted to maybe get in your program or something, how can they find you?
they can find me. We can drop my email address in there.
Say it out
I
loud.
have a website. I have a Facebook. So there's a lot of different ways you can connect and contact me. And just for anybody who would be interested, I am always, always open to just jumping into a conversation because that's where we can really communicate and see where you're at and get some clarity and see if my work might be right, a good fit to support people. And if not, I have an amazing network of people as well. Yeah.
So what's your website?
It's shellyhaas.com. My last name is spelled Haas.
That's easy. ShellyHaas.com.
Yep. And my program is called Easeful Eating.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Francine. Thanks for having me.